This morning, the September debate stage is officially set, and the sharply smaller field of debaters has already started a new phase of the winnowing process. Nearly half of the 2020 Democratic hopefuls will be watching the debate from the sidelines, and now at least one is leaving the race altogether. Kirsten Gillibrand, the New York senator who put women's rights at the center of her campaign, announcing her departure from the race last night with some words of advice for her fellow contenders.
But it's important to know when it's not your time and to know how you can best serve your community and country. I believe I can best serve by helping to unite us to beat Donald Trump in 2020.
Gillibrand follows 5 others who have dropped out of the race in recent weeks after not gaining traction in the polls. 2 of them are already running for other offices. But that still leaves 8 candidates in the race, despite not qualifying for the next debate. 2 tell us at MSNBC yesterday, and then Tim Ryan today, that they have no plans to drop out. NBC road warrior Garrett Haake is out on the trail in Rock Hill, South Carolina, with the very latest. Hey, Garrett, what do we know about Senator Gillibrand's decision and, what impact it might have on the race?
Well, Chris, we know she reached it the night before she announced it, essentially looking at the writing on the wall and knowing she would not make the debate stage. Now, when a candidate's polling at essentially less than 2% nationwide, dropping out will not make major waves in and of itself. Her donors and her supporters will go to other candidates. Gillibrand had a widely praised, widely liked staff. All of those staffers who want jobs in other campaigns will probably get snapped up. There are a lot of professionals in that operation, and her endorsement will be valuable down the line should she choose to give it. That may be part of the reason that all of the candidates were praising Gillibrand's service and her presence in this race, including Joe Biden, who I asked about her decision to drop out last night. Take a listen.
She's smart as hell. She had a lot to contribute. It's hard. It's hard when you have so many people in the race. She's a caliber person, and I hope that means she's still going to stay deeply involved in what she's doing, because if I'm lucky enough to be one of the people who gets elected, and the person who gets elected, I would go to her for help.
Chris, the biggest impact Gillibrand dropping out might have on the race more broadly at this point, this was a candidate who doesn't have something else she needs to go run for. She had more money in her Senate account that she could have transferred over to help her presidential campaign fortunes. But looking at the writing on the wall and getting out might put more pressure on some of those other candidates who did not make the debate stage to do the same.
And you're traveling with Biden today again. His campaign got some affirmation when the folks who run the Monmouth poll said, yes, indeed, their poll had essentially been an outlier. It had him in a dead heat with Warren and Sanders. So what are you hearing from them this morning about that?
Yeah, look, the Biden campaign was very pleased to see the next several national polls reflect the broader trend in this race, which is that Biden is still the front runner, in some case by a pretty significant margin. It's a good reminder for all of us in this line of to never put too much stock in any one poll. Keep an eye on the averages, keep an eye on the trends, and in this case, the trend line does still show Biden with broad support across the party. We're here in South Carolina today. It's probably his single strongest state. He's got bedrock support with African-American voters in this state. That's going to be very important for the primary writ large. Again, the trend lines are fairly consistent here. Biden in the lead, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren running in 2 and 3, depending on which polls you're looking at. Close, but not so close yet as to make the Biden campaign sweat it particularly hard as we approach fall, Chris.
All right. Thanks so much, Garrett Haake. Appreciate it. Well, let's talk more about this with Matt Welch back with me and former Maryland Democratic Congresswoman Donna Edwards. So, Donna, look, Senator Gillibrand saying in her departure video, you have to know when it's your time and how to best serve your country. Did you hear in that maybe a message to other low polling candidates? Are folks who at 1% or less at this point maybe needing to listen to that advice?
I did hear that, and I thought Senator Gillibrand's departure message was really a class act. I mean, look, I confess she's a friend, and I think that she ran a strong campaign with a strong message. And in this wide field, it just didn't come through. And I think what she's saying is we have a Senate, as Democrats, a Senate that can be won for the majority and for Democrats if we run candidates who are in those races. We have other opportunities for these candidates and for her to really challenge Donald Trump by supporting the eventual nominee of the party. There's a lot at stake out there, and I think Senator Gillibrand was saying, look, I didn't have the polling numbers, couldn't really raise the money, couldn't get the campaign off the ground. And you know what? There are an awful lot of other people in this race, about a dozen of them that are sitting in exactly the same place. And it's time for us to get on with the process of getting our nominee and making sure that Donald Trump is beaten in November 2020.
Matt, on its face, you could just say, okay, another one drops out. But I think that Kirsten Gillibrand's an interesting case study. Look, she's somebody who has won in Republican areas before. That's a good thing to talk about. In the Me Too era, she is someone who had a track record on women's issues and wanted to run a lot on women's issues. She spent number 2 behind Tom Steyer, the most money of anybody in this race. And I think, as Garrett pointed out, she had a staff that a lot of people might want to raid. Good people who also thought she had a legit chance of being a presidential nominee or at least getting further than she has. What do you read into what we've just seen?
And she utterly failed to raise a pulse, right?
Yeah.
In this entire process. And there are plenty of other candidates, too, who are in the Senate and who have long track records who have not,
governors, too.
Crossed above the 1% threshold. I think there are a lot of crowded lanes, and one of hers is, and you referenced, and this is an important thing, yes, she won in Republican districts. There are a lot of people in the Democratic side who, at various points in their career, were very unorthodox compared to usual progressives. Cory Booker was for teachers' unions. Beto O'Rourke was talking about the debt and deficit against Ted Cruz, right? All of these candidates have abandoned and ditched all of that stuff and have gone to be and run a very sort of progressive, almost a Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren-friendly campaigns. Julian Castro is another example of this. There's only so many people who can fit in that area, and it also shows that people kind of lack the courage of whatever convictions that they had in those moments to cross over in that direction. So I don't think it's going to have a huge impact, right? We're lopping off the bits of the long tail here. It's not going to impact what's happening between Biden and Warren and Sanders right now. But it shows that, if you want to impact things in this world, it's interesting that people think that they need to run for president instead of be a United States senator. That used to be kind of an important job.
Yeah.
And I hope we get to a point where it is considered an important job again by dint of it actually does things.
Garrett also said something really interesting, which is about how that even Warren and Sanders are not enough to really worry them too much. They're not close enough. There are people who say this is already a 5-way or even a 3-way race. Katie Glick, though, wrote in the New York Times, because there is no national primary, the standing of the candidates in the early voting primary states may matter far more than the nationwide snapshots, obviously, that we all look at. Is that sort of what a lot of these second, third tier candidates are hanging their hat on?
Well, sure. I mean, Barack Obama changed his life by winning Iowa.
Yeah.
Put all his bets down there.
Changed history.
Beto O'Rourke thought he could repeat that in Iowa and spent more time there, and he isn't raising much of a pulse there right now too. The big thing to look for in terms of Warren and Sanders is that their combined vote total in every poll, nationally and locally, has been 30%. It's been when Bernie was out polling her 3-1, it was still a combined 30%. Warren is going to try to make an electability case, saying, yes, I am progressive, but I'm also electable. So having those three on the debate stage, Biden is electable, Sanders is a progressive revolutionary, Warren wants to be both. That is the interesting thing. Can she grow that above 30%? Can she appeal to people who are beyond the progressive race? I think that's the biggest question going into this debate.
Yeah, that is the key thing people are going to be watching, right, Donna, in this next debate. We have not seen Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden on a debate stage together. It's going to be fascinating.
Well, it really will be. And if you look at Elizabeth Warren's performance in the first two debates, she chose, rather than go after any one of the candidates or go after Joe Biden, who wasn't on her stage, she chose to just stay in her lane, focus on her plans, describe her biography connected to people's concerns. And it'll be interesting to see whether she takes the same tack in this debate stage. And there's still 10 candidates on the stage. And so until we begin to winnow a little bit more, we may not see the kind of back and forth sort of contest that everybody's looking for.
So for the folks who are going to be sitting and watching this debate, Tim Ryan is making the case, Donna, for staying in the race, suggesting he can overcome not being on the debate stage. And this is part of the release from his campaign. After debating in 2 DNC debates with the opportunity to speak for roughly 19 minutes, our campaign realizes that there are more constructive ways for us to connect to voters than a mad dash to spend $50 to get a $1 contribution. While these national platforms are helpful, our campaign is focused on the old school tactics like taking our message directly to voters and caucus goers in the communities of the early states. But realistically, when you're talking about 8 million, 10 million, 13 million people watching, are old school tactics enough?
Well, I think that the only message you can have if you didn't make the debate stage is the message that Tim Ryan has. I don't think it's going to be particularly effective. I mean, you cannot pass up as a national candidate an opportunity to speak to, 15, maybe even 20 million people on one night, even if you just get a couple of minutes to do it on a crowded debate stage. And so I think some of these candidates who are not qualifying for the debates, and also who are not really making that much headway, frankly, in the early primary states, it's going to be time for them to begin to rethink, and there will be a natural winnowing because the money won't be there, the people won't be there, the attention won't be there, and there won't any longer be a rationale for that candidate to still be in the race.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.